The City of Johannesburg met with Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa and Power Utility Eskom yesterday in an attempt to resolve its debt issues. The problem has led to the power utility threatening to interrupt the electricity supply to the metro. In a statement, Eskom says the City of Johannesburg and City Power owe it an amount of 4.9 billion rand, excluding the current account of a further 1.4 billion rand, which is due and payable at the end of November this year. To speak more on this, let's now welcome governance expert, Professor Theo Venter. Professor, very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to SA Today.
Thank you.
Now, Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, as I've mentioned, and the Joburg Mayor Dada Morero say they've appointed a mediator to help resolve the city's electricity debt to Eskom. I would imagine what a tough balancing act it would be for this mediator, isn't it? So what's your understanding of this mediator's terms of reference in terms of bringing this issue to finality?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a mediator or a facilitator. I see in the minister's report they refer to it as a technician. I think their first job is to sort out what is payable now. In other words, by the end of November, the 1.4 billion that you mentioned. And then secondly, how to pay the outstanding debt on which the City of Johannesburg is taking Eskom to task, saying that they were wrongly billed. And I think there is where the problem actually emerged and why Eskom went public and to the courts to get this thing sorted out. The minister was critical about Eskom's move, saying Eskom went public before all possible avenues were utilized. But I think putting a sense of urgency on paying the account is important. It's not only Johannesburg that is currently in huge debt. Tshwane is managing their debt. All the big metros having problems with their debt to Eskom, of which I think Mangaung is the worst. And if you look at the total figure, Eskom's debt is growing by 3 billion per month. And it now stands at a whopping 90 billion rand. Now, that is huge. And I think the pressure on Johannesburg is inter alia for Eskom to get its cash flow sorted out. Because without cash flow, Eskom cannot do what they want to do. And the other thing that we must put also on the table is that it is not very good to have the instability in governance when you have debts like this. And this applies to both Tshwane and Johannesburg. You need stable government to get stable agreements and to stick to dates.
Now, Prof, you've touched earlier on overbilling or incorrect billing, and municipalities have been accusing Eskom's bullying tactics and overbilling, and the City of Joburg says that it has long disputed its 3.4 billion rand claim by Eskom. And if the city does indeed prove such a claim of overbilling, would this reverse the issue of the debt with Eskom?
Yeah, in a small way it would, and it would be a good thing if a facilitator or a mediator or a technician can sort out the problem. But there's a bigger problem on the horizon, and that is, even though the debt is increasing, we are also sitting in South Africa at the moment with a growing demand for solar and alternative energies. And all of the municipalities in the country, all 257 of them, are currently seeing income declining because a lot of users have used rooftop solar and all kinds of different alternative energy provision. And that cuts into the income of our metros and our towns, because electricity makes up upwards of 60% of the income of local government. So you can see it's a problem for Eskom to get its money, but it is at the same time a huge problem for our municipalities also. And that is why I think Eskom or Johannesburg is fighting tooth and nail to get the right amounts, and then they can pay it. But if we look at the joint declaration that was made, the press conference, Johannesburg will definitely pay the current arrears by the end of November.
And how has Joburg's governance structures, contributed to the accumulation of such a massive debt? I mean, do you believe there was lapses in oversight or even accountability?
In its simplest, if I can put it to the listeners, local government is about cash flow. You provide a service, whether it's water, whether it's electricity, and then the receiver of that service pays you every month, or in some cases like electricity, it's a prepaid kind of agreement. Now, if one of the two is not delivering, then you run into the kind of problems that we're having at local government. And I think with metros, the problems are just mega size bigger than with smaller municipalities. And that is where the politicians come in. Their oversight role, and their role in their wards and their roles in city councils to take the right decisions at the right time, those are crucial. And I think in Johannesburg and to a certain extent in Tshwane, some of these things did happen, and it needs to be sorted out very, very urgently.
And from a governance perspective, Prof, what are some of the primary risks associated with a metro like Johannesburg owing such a vast amount of money to Eskom?
Well, in the end, it becomes a national problem because we have one tax system. The only other tax income that we do get in terms of governing politically would be local taxes that you pay in terms of property taxes and so on. But basically, all municipalities tap into the national fiscus in terms of the Division of Revenue Act. And I think as this debt is growing, the debt is actually accumulating to South Africa and not necessarily just to a city. I don't think a country like South Africa can afford any of its metros to go bankrupt, and there will have to be an intervention of some kind. And I've been saying this for a very long time. Some of the old debt, especially to Eskom and to water councils and so on, if the debt is older than 3 to 6 months, I do not think these institutions have the ability to pay that. So we must search for another kind of solution. But keeping the debt on the books all the time and having these tit-for-tat kind of arguments is not taking us forward.
All right, Professor Venter, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us. Well, that was our governance expert, Professor Theo Venter, just reacting to news that the City of Johannesburg and Electricity Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa met yesterday in an attempt to resolve the power-related issues there, and they even appointed a mediator to look into the debt issue that the City of Joburg has with Eskom.